Thank you so much. I'm really honored to be here. And thank you, Rabbi Bacon, for your help this week. And I just wanted to say that after I had sent in the bio for you, I realized we actually have a newer member of the family. A week ago, our son David became engaged to the love of his life, and we are so excited for David and Brittany and as they begin this new chapter. Okay, so tonight's double Torah portion, Shukat Malak, takes place while the Israelites are wandering the desert, close to arriving in the Promised Land. Moses' siblings, Miriam and Aaron, both die in this portion, but after Miriam dies and before Aaron does, something very interesting happens. The people are without water, and they're suffering, and they're quarrelsome. And so Moses and Aaron go to the tent of meeting for God's help. God tells Moses to take his rod, assemble the community, and order the rock there to yield water. God promises a plentiful supply of water. So Moses takes his rod and he assembles the community, and then he says, "Listen, you rebels, shall we get water for you out of this rock?" He strikes the rock twice with his rod, and as promised, water flows. But God has a problem with this. He says to Moses and Aaron, "Because you did not trust me enough to affirm my sanctity in the sight of the Israelite people, you shall not lead the congregation into the land that I have given them." Aaron dies soon after this, and Moses, though he lives longer than Aaron, will not set foot in the Promised Land. Now, obviously, Moses did something wrong for God to have responded this way, but what exactly was it? Scholars and rabbis have written much about this, with no consensus. Some say that in striking the rock, Moses disobeyed God because God never said to strike the rock. Others maintain that he showed a lack of faith in God by striking the rock and not simply waiting for the water to appear. Some say the wrong thing was that he struck the rock twice instead of once. Some say that in striking the rock, he displayed anger, which spurred God to mete out this punishment. Or some believe that the problem was that Moses called the people rebels, and in this way disrespected them. Another explanation is that Moses spoke about the water with a question, "Shall we get water for you?" which seemed to suggest that it was Moses and Aaron, and not God, who had this water-producing power. And there are even some suggestions that the rod and the rock were a ruse, that God wasn't mad that Moses struck the rock. No, God simply wanted an excuse to get Moses and Aaron out of the picture in order to have a more direct relationship with the Israelites. But even if Moses did do something wrong, the punishment is so harsh. After all, Moses stood up to Pharaoh, brought the people out of slavery, and led them through a harrowing 40 years. And after all that, he doesn't even get to set foot in the Promised Land? I can't help but think that surely Moses would have wanted to say, "Can I get a do-over?" So often I found myself thinking that life would be so much better if it came with do-overs, or even just a dress rehearsal. I'm reminded of the movie Peggy Sue Got Married, where Kathleen Turner, as Peggy Sue, takes a moment at her high school reunion to reflect on her life. Though she's going through a divorce, she maintains that life is good. She has 2 great kids and she has her own business. Still, she says with a rueful laugh, "If I knew then what I know now, I'd do a lot of things differently." The irony, of course, is that when she gets that second chance, she ends up making the same decisions all over again. And yet, I can't help thinking that this is one of the things that make life, life. That often when it counts most, there are no second chances. We make the best decisions we can at the moment, and even if we're inexperienced, even if we're emotional, even if we have limited information, we move ahead with a decision and an action, and then we live with the consequences. Sometimes we've predicted them correctly, and sometimes we are way off base. And sadly, sometimes we're like Moses, I fear, watching things go south and not even knowing for sure what we did wrong. I used to teach religious school here at WRT, 2nd grade. I had a few very rambunctious kids, but it wasn't a big problem. However, there was one Sunday morning, it was the weekend during Hanukkah, and the kids were really wound up, probably too little sleep, too much sugar, and a lot of excitement for the upcoming school break. One little boy said something hugely inappropriate and mean directed at another person in the room, and while I was normally a pretty calm teacher, this crossed the line. I stood up and instructed him to follow me out of the room, leaving the rest of the class under the supervision of my high school student aide. I told him I was taking him to the office. Now, halfway down the hall, the little boy suddenly burst into tears. He was a really easygoing kid. Nothing ever fazed him. I was absolutely shocked. What's going on? What's the matter? What's the matter? I never expected that. And finally, when he was able to pull himself together, he explained that if his parents received a call about his behavior, they wouldn't let him have the rest of his Hanukkah presents. My heart broke. And you know what? I couldn't go through with it. I knew that I thought it was an impulsive mistake, and given his emotional response, I thought he'd likely never do it again. And so I just told him that if he went back in the classroom and apologized, we put the whole thing behind us. And that's what happened. Because I really felt that if anyone deserved a second chance, it was him. Or maybe it was me. I was so glad to be able to change my mind and reverse course and not take him down to the office. I'm kind of a little grateful that he decided to cry in front of me so that I could have that second chance. I just know that if I had gone ahead and brought him to the office, I would still regret it to this day. But second chances aren't the rule, they're the exception, and the fact reveals something very profound about life, how vulnerable Moses was, how vulnerable we all are. We live with the risk of making mistakes every single day. We make our best decisions and we hold out hope, knowing we are human and can't control the outcomes, at least not to the extent we'd like to. Now, as you heard, I'm a novelist, and this is a big theme of my newest novel, Secrets of the Italian Island, a historical novel that takes place largely in 1943 during the Nazi invasion of northern and central Italy. The story is based on a true story of a small private island owned by a Polish inventor. He built a medieval-style castle there in the late 19th century and hosted sculptors, painters, writers who did their best work while staying in that spectacular venue. The castle's glory days were numbered, however, as it was taken over by the Nazis and badly damaged during the war. It was never again to be the Shangri-La it once was. I use this castle as inspiration for my book, and in my story, at a pivotal moment just before the Nazis approached the castle, my main character, Annalisa, has to make a decision. She has been given 2 passages to America, and she has to decide whom to take with her, her sister or the man she loves. Now, I won't tell you what choice she makes. You'll have to read the book to find out, but I will tell you that she has no possibility to change her mind, and that the decision she makes determines, for better or worse, the course of the rest of her life. In this week's Parsha, the episode with Moses and the rock is followed by the death of Aaron, and many Parshiot later we'll read of the death of Moses. In Parsha Nitzavim, which is my favorite portion of the Torah, if you can have a favorite portion, Moses gives his final instructions to the Israelites, since he will no longer be with them to guide them. And this is the portion where he exhorts them to choose life. And I wonder, would he have made this lyrical speech, this heartfelt and important plea, if he had had the chance to approach the rock with the water a second time? Not having second chances is what makes us human and what makes us a little helpless. But I also think in some ways it's what leads us to be heroic and memorable. It's what leads us to be our higher selves. Thank you. Thank you.